was staying with a mosque suicide bombing that took place in Pakistan on Monday. The death toll, which targeted policemen in the city of Peshawar, has risen to 95. As a senior superintendent of police says, more than 225 people were injured. There is more in the following reports.
Rescuers have completed the scramble to retrieve worshippers buried in the rubble, pulling out 9 people alive, but recovering a further 24 bodies. A hospital spokesman confirmed that more than 100 persons remained wounded. Meanwhile, funerals have been carried out for more than 20 police officers, their coffins draped with the Pakistan flag. The bodies of the dead have started to be returned to their families. According to Peshawar Police Chief Mohammed Ijaz Khan, between 300 and 400 police officers had been in the area at that time. The mosque is in one of the most heavily controlled areas of the city, which includes police headquarters and intelligence and counter-terrorism bureaus. On Tuesday, local media lined the road outside the gate, the closest that security would allow. The Pakistani Taliban has denied involvement after an initial claim by one of its commanders. Monday's blast took place around 1:30 p.m. local time during afternoon prayers. An entire wall of the building collapsed and the mosque was covered in bricks and debris as people clambered over the rubble to escape. Pakistan's Prime Minister and other leaders have condemned Monday's attack, which is one of the worst in the country in recent years. The Prime Minister traveled to Peshawar on an emergency visit where he will be briefed by local officials and visit those wounded by the blast. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres condemned the attack.
Of course, the Secretary General strongly condemns the suicide bombing that took place at a mosque in Peshawar in Pakistan earlier today. I think it is particularly abhorrent that such an attack occurred at a place of worship. Freedom of religion, freedom of belief, and the ability to worship in peace is a fundamental human right. The Secretary General extends his heartfelt condolences to the families of the victims and wishes a prompt recovery to those injured. And he reiterates the solidarity of the United Nations and the government and people of Pakistan in their efforts to address terrorism and violent extremism.
The attack on the mosque took place at the start of a key week for Pakistani diplomacy. On Monday, the president of the United Arab Emirates, Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, was due to visit Islamabad, although the trip was cancelled at the last minute because of bad weather. On Tuesday, an International Monetary Fund delegation is meant to visit Pakistan as part of the process to unlock a bailout loan to prevent the country from defaulting. Last March, Peshawar was the target of another bombing, which killed dozens in a Shia Muslim mosque in the majority Sunni Muslim country.
And joining me to discuss the incidents is a global affairs analyst, Amuda Musigbudi. Amuda, good to have you join us.
Thank you so much, Precious One.
So despite credible intelligence reports of an impending attack in Peshawar and also a threat alert being issued, we still saw that this suicide bomber was able to get into such a sensitive area. Would you say that this was an intel failure?
If we try to understand what is happening in Pakistan, particularly since 2021 that the Taliban took over fully in Afghanistan, knowing full well that Pakistan is a border state to Afghanistan, then we would understand that it may not necessarily be as a result of the failure of a state to stem the tide. In fact, statistics have shown that there's been an increase in incidences of attacks, terrorist attacks in Pakistan between 2021 and 2022. In fact, it jumped from 267 incidences in 2021 to 361 in 2022. And that also meant that there was also a spiral increase in the number of security officials and terrorists that were also killed during the period. So this attack coming up is not necessarily a product of the failure of the Pakistani state or the Pakistani security forces to prevent the attack. Yes, they could have done more because there were alerts. In fact, it's also striking that early this month, I think January 4, the Taliban government in Afghanistan made a tweet where it was mocking the Pakistani state, because of the claims by the Pakistani state that it was going to start attacking some strongholds of the TPP, the Taliban Pakistan, which is a terrorist group that is loyal to the Taliban government but of course attacking Pakistan. So all these things put together will tell you that there is more to this. It is more of a state, terrorism, and by that I mean a terrorism that's funded by and aided by the Afghanistan government. So that explains the reason for how this attack has come to be. So I would not heap the blame totally on the Pakistani government in this instance.
So I want to raise two critical questions from what you just said. The first one, you mentioned the Taliban. A lot of people are now saying that perhaps this is the chicken coming home to roost. When you look at the role that Pakistan has played in terms of terrorism, it has allowed this country be a breeding ground for terrorists. And many say, look, this is the chicken coming home to roost. Do you agree with that submission?
Of course, without doubt. You see, it's like someone who has decided to raise a leopard or a tiger in his house just to scare his neighbors. And definitely, when that tiger becomes full grown, then that person will definitely, of course, without doubt, be lying in the belly of the tiger himself. And that's just a fact. The Taliban government was properly aided by Pakistan. Remember when Ashraf was the president of Afghanistan, he constantly kept complaining about the role Pakistan was playing in all of this. And now that, of course, now the government, the state itself, the Pakistani state, is having its hands full from the terror which they raised. But like they say, the aid you give, that's what we have.
And there were those who accused the former Prime Minister Imran Khan of that he did embolden the Taliban, because if you remember, he tried to broker a peace talks with the Pakistani Taliban, but he also brought in the Afghan Taliban into the peace talks, and there was a truce that both sides did not respect, and people felt that, look, he had emboldened the Taliban. But we also know that between 2015 and 2022, there was a decrease in attacks in Pakistan. What exactly do you think has emboldened the Taliban now?
Well, I think one thing that emboldened the Taliban, like I said earlier, is the eventual takeover of Afghanistan by the Taliban. Don't forget that this group called themselves the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, which means that it's a group of Talibans who are loyal to the Taliban, of course, who would have their loyalty and their support from the Taliban government in Afghanistan, but with a target for Pakistan. So I would not blame the former leader, because yes, when that truce was signed, it was at a time when even Pakistan as a state had a state policy of supporting the Taliban movement, and that explains why there was a reduced attack. Like I said earlier too, in 2021 we had 267 attacks. It was that same, in fact, there was 196 attacks in 2020, and by 2021 it jumped to 267. Now, that was the time when the Taliban took over in Afghanistan, and that emboldened the Taliban, the TTP, to also push further attacks. In fact, they set up their own government. As of 2022, they have set up their own government with ministers in different positions, telling you that if they can do what was done in Afghanistan, then it can be replicated in Pakistan. So it's not a function of whether a truce was signed or not. But there's nothing bad in negotiating if it could, if you can wrestle peace from that. But when you have what I'll call, this lion, this tiger has tasted blood already. Yes, and it is calling for more blood.
Well, Pakistan is currently dealing with an economic crisis, political infighting, and on top of that now, security crisis as well. We'll see how things play out. Thank you so much for talking to us, as always, Global Affairs Analyst Amuda Musibudi.
You're most welcome.